Hey guys, so just a bit of a heads up. I'm currently doing these reviews during exam season, so if the video seems a bit sloppy and the script is just a bit meh, that's probably the main reason why. um, but nonetheless, I hope you guys enjoy, and sorry for any slip-ups and mistakes I do. Well, ladies, gentlemen, and everyone in between, the time has come once again for yet another series of Inside Number 9. This time for Series A, we have 5 unique episodes fresh out of the oven, and 5 tales for Steve Pemberton and Reece Shearsmith have weaved in their uniquely comedic and dark way. And seeing as how I did Series 7 last time and The Bones of St. Nicholas, we're going to go through every new episode as I express my thoughts on each one, because if there's one guy you can trust, it's a random person on the internet. So, without further ado, let's dive into Series 8 of Inside Number 9. I feel like Inside Number 9 is now in a quite unique position for a show of its nature. The show itself has amassed 8 series, which is commendable, but it's also an anthology show from the BBC on a comedy budget, which has somehow become a critical darling not just in the UK, but pretty much the wider world. In fact, looking at other anthologies, I'd say Inside Number 9 is the best just by comparison. Black Mirror hasn't really been all that interesting in the past few years. There was that reboot of The Twilight Zone, which everyone forgotten about. I've not really seen Room 104, and I really like Love, Death and Robots, but that's just because I'm an animation glutton. But this seemingly great situation has its specific drawbacks now, as Steve and Reece now have to craft 5 more ingenious and interesting tales in the wake of rabid fans trying to guess the twist constantly. So, does Mother's Ruin fulfill that task? Well, sort of. In this tale, we follow brothers Edward and Harry Jr. Blackwood. One is cold and has separated himself from the family, while the other is more caring and naive, taking care of their mother until she died in her sleep. Their parents, however, were rotten to the core to everyone in the East End, and before her passing, their mother, Annie, hid a large sum of money. So, hoping to find out where it's buried, Edward and the reluctant Harry break into their mother's old bungalow to use the power of necromancy to contact the great beyond and get answers. But like always in the show, something always has to go wrong, and this time it involves the departure of a parrot and the arrival of the house's new owners, maybe even more rotten than the Blackwoods. Like many episodes before in the past, the main characters of this episode are Steve and Reece's, in this case the 2 brothers, Edward and Harry Jr. Throughout the course of the episode, we are given little subtle hints as to how they feel about each other, as well as their parents and the lives that they led. Harry is the golden boy, while Edward is left to search for a life on his own, leaving his brother to pick up the pieces. Reece and Steve do a great job at betraying their brotherly bond, bickering at each other over small matters before coming together in the end in the face of danger, because after all, family is family, even if your brother is dressed in your dead mum's clothes and smelling of incense.
Jesus Christ, I knew it, you dirty bastards. As if it's not bad enough you're fucking each other, one of you has to be dressed as a little old lady as well.
Not incest, you silly twat.
While Harry himself may feel a bit pushed to the side, Edward is quite the interesting character in this episode. At first, he seems a bit arrogant and rough, almost like the younger version of his parents, but as the episode progresses, we see this rough side of him chipping away, revealing his ingenuity and his bond with Harry. While Edward thinks less of his parents, even leaving his mother in his younger brother's care, it can be argued that he may in fact be going down the same road as them, breaking and entering in order to gain a Georgie from beyond the grave. He's also quite quick thinking and clearly knowledgeable in certain areas, using necromancy and bargaining in order to ensure that he gets what he wants, whether it can be money or safety for him and Harry. I mean, I can think of worse Edwards that Reece has played before. Contrasting with that, however, we have the primary antagonists for the episode, Reggie and Franny Stone, who I'd argue are really the driving force of the whole piece. When they arrive, suddenly everything is turned upside down as their cruelty is shown through their chat with the brothers, as well as the ways they try to dispose of them. Focusing on Reggie in particular, Phil Daniels really does a great job at really playing a villain in the episode, clearly expressing joy and infatuation towards certain things, such as his wife, or Annie, or the Bear's Claw. He really sews in this grim and despairful tone to the episode while never making the whole experience seem miserable, and his arrival was purposefully abrupt to show the shift in tone, with its appearance of blues and shadows in the scene followed by these bright harsh lights. You could certainly laugh at a few of his lines, but it's very typically a nervous laugh, as you're unsure what exactly he's going to do next. This tone is carried on past the first act of the episode, and I like the sort of misdirect we get, initially thinking that the conflict would first arise as a result of the brothers, and then realizing that it's actually going to be at the hands of Reggie and Franny. The episode itself is constantly teasing with the audience and hinting at a rather gruesome outcome. Firstly, you think Harry's going to be killed, and then you think it's Edward who's going to be killed, then Harry again, until ultimately coming out to reveal it being Reggie getting killed and Edward losing his foot, with some rather gory results. You can really feel Edward's pain and agony through Reese's muffled screams and body language in this scene, and I wouldn't be surprised if some of you winced or cringed at the foot cutting scene, which felt straight out of a horror movie.
Fucking doddle.
Ultimately, the episode's climax boils down to the return of Annie, which keeps every single character's eyes on her, or rather Edward, since it's technically his body saying these words. But while she may not have revealed where her money was buried, it did ultimately cause Reggie to be buried by Franny in the morning, as Annie spitefully calls out her supposed affair with him. The entire emotional climax of the episode hinges on this particular moment, but I think you might have different thoughts towards it and the episode itself depending on whether you think the possession actually occurred. Even though he lost a foot, it's revealed that Edward's sacrifice wasn't enough to bring their mother back, as Edward was simply lying in order to save both him and Harry while taking advantage of their situation to ensure they at least survive by getting rid of the clear psychopath in the bungalow. Personally, I believe the intent towards Edward's whole possession was to be just a farce in order to buy time despite Reggie by playing on his relationship with Annie, while maybe letting him and Harry go. I can see why some people may believe it was truly Annie on first watch, though I don't think Franny killing him was originally a part of Edward's plan. Women who kill indeed. Speaking of which, I kind of found the twist, I suppose, to be a bit anticlimactic, and it's kind of amusing seeing how Reggie's sacrifice fulfilled the original necromancy ritual, but with the constant teasing of danger throughout the episode, and possibly just because of the whole pride possession being one obvious red herring, it does come across as a bit underwhelming. In fact, the parents saying what you want was actually heard earlier on in the episode, so you can argue that maybe it isn't actually possessed. Also, the final scene itself harks onto earlier in the episode in terms of its lighting. As soon as the two brothers are left alone with the parrot, we're back to the original blues and shadows, showing that without Reggie and Franny's involvement now, it's as if things are finally going back to what Edward originally wanted, and all it cost him was a foot.
What do you want? Mom?
I don't know whether or not it's too early or if this video is going to end up being too short, but I feel like now is a good place to wrap up my thoughts. In summary, while Mother's Ruin may not exactly be the best episode of the show, it does indeed have certain memorable aspects to it, from its premise and its characters to the turns the story goes down as it progresses into a more dark and violent tale. So, to answer the question I posed at the start, although it may not have been the best episode, it still goes to prove that Steve and Reese haven't run out of ideas for their usual charismatic and grim anthology, and I for one can't wait to see what Series A has in store for us next.